A scathing state audit on deaths in San Diego County jails is released on the same day Sheriff Bill Gore retires. Coming up, we hear from an undersheriff and the state auditor.
The feedback from our SDG&E rate hike stories has been consistent. People are frustrated and wondering what can they do to lower rates.
We're seeing county COVID numbers on the decline, but that's not the same for hospitalizations and ICU numbers.
The city's expansion of bike lanes throughout North Park last summer created a lot of controversy. So how much are they actually being used?
And donate your old instrument to a student in need for an Eagle Scout project that aims to play them again.
CBS 8 News Live at 6 starts now.
The San Diego County Sheriff's Department has failed to adequately prevent and respond to deaths of people in their custody. That's the assessment tonight coming from the California State Auditor's Office. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Carlo Cicchetto.
I'm Marcella Lee. The auditor released the findings of a report investigating 30 of 185 deaths in San Diego's jails since 2006. CBS 8's Jesse Pagan has the report and talked with the auditor and the undersheriff. Jesse?
Carlo, Marcella, throughout the 126 pages, the auditor lays out the faults they say contributed to the deaths in jail, starting at intake. With the number of deaths being the second highest in the state, the auditor tells me their recommendations go above the Sheriff's Department to the state legislature.
I think it's pretty significant. San Diego really stands out.
Acting California State Auditor Mike Tilden's audit of deaths in the San Diego County jails shows why.
We looked at 30 of these deaths. We went through case files. We looked at video surveillance, and we found there are some real basic things that are not happening in San Diego.
Starting at intake, the report's main finding at the jails is a, quote, failure to consistently provide adequate medical and mental health care from the moment inmates come in. Some of those inmates die days after from, quote, insufficient safety checks during their stay. From there, Tilden says the rest of the issues come from more of a policy level.
They're not doing a good job of really figuring out what went wrong, what are the lessons learned, and what changes could be made.
The report states the department's process for investigating deaths in custody is, quote, ineffective, structurally problematic, and lacking in transparency. It also calls out the county's Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board, saying it, quote, failed to conduct independent, timely, or thorough investigations.
You know, it's really hard to read, but I understand some of what they've said, and the recommendations are good ones. A lot of them we contributed to with some of our ideas, and we've either already implemented or planning to implement.
Undersheriff Kelly Martinez, also a candidate for sheriff, says the department opened their doors and processes to fully cooperate. She says better health care is one of the findings she's known they need to improve on.
We have taken a lot of those recommendations to heart. It's my intent, though, to take this seriously, to invest heavily in the jails where we need to make them safer environments for the people in our custody.
Tilden says their recommendations are mostly directed at the state legislature. They want to amend state law to compel the department make changes to its policies surrounding health evaluations, medical and mental health care, and for oversight groups like the Board of State and Community Corrections and CLRB to revise their practices.
I certainly take ownership of the changes that we need to make, and I plan to implement as many of those changes as I can while I'm here.
The North County Equity and Justice Coalition's Saving Lives in Custody campaign says they'll be responding to the audit tomorrow at the Sheriff's Department headquarters. In a statement, the department says they take the audit seriously and are taking action to implement the recommendations, which they say will take, quote, substantial investment in the existing jail system. We've got the full audit report and the Sheriff's Department's response on our website, cbs8.com. Carlo?
Jesse, so much to process here, but the immediate question with this report coming down is where do we go from here? What's next? Is there a process?
Yeah, Carlo, that's exactly it. When I talked to the auditor, they said, you know, they've delivered these recommendations to obviously the Department of Jails, BCSS, also the state legislature. So from there, it really just depends on who takes the onus of making those changes and those recommendations. As you heard from the undersheriff, she says she's planning to do as much as she can, and she says she hopes that the state legislature does include them, the experts on this industry, in the process.
Great job breaking down that audit for us. Jesse Pagan reporting live. Thanks, Jesse.
The 3 adult men accused of killing a 14-year-old in a drive-by shooting were in court today.
They all pleaded not guilty in the murder of Eric Balanzar as he was walking home from school in Mount Hope on Monday. Also today, San Diego police made a 5th arrest in connection with the murder. They say a second juvenile believed to be involved was arrested during a traffic stop today. The 3 adult men are being held in custody without bail.
Bail is being set at no bail, and that ensures that the defendants will make their next court appearance, but it also, given the charges in this case, murder, gang allegations, they pose a significant danger to the community.
Are you stipulating to the body-worn protective order?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, that will be.
A 17-year-old is accused of being the actual gunman. He'll be in court on Monday.
New COVID cases across the county are up slightly, but still down significantly from a few weeks ago. County health officials reported 3,200 new cases today. State data shows hospitalizations have dropped to just over 1,100. The number of patients in intensive care also dropped to 206. 22 more deaths, though, bring that total to 4,757.
Despite the county seeing fewer positive COVID tests, county health officials are seeing a rise in COVID deaths.
This comes as hospitals are seeing patients staying longer and some moving into the ICU. CBS 8's Heather Hope spoke to 2 local doctors about this trend.
San Diego County COVID case rates and testing rates have been dropping week to week, but the number of COVID hospitalizations is on the rise, reaching 80% hospital capacity, and those in the ICU has been up by 15%.
We know that cases rise, and 2 or 3 weeks later, we start to see hospitalizations rise, and typically right around peak or after the peak of hospitalizations, we begin to see critical care numbers rise.
UCSD Chief Medical Officer Chris Longhurst says this trend has come up throughout the COVID pandemic, where it typically takes people a week or 2 after being infected to require hospitalization and impact those numbers.
So those people who got sick, early or at the peak are just now coming to the hospital requiring oxygen. And typically it's after that hospitalization surge that some of the sickest in the hospital begin to require intensive care.
A UCSD testing chart shows how severe the Omicron surge has been compared to cases at the start of the pandemic. Longhurst says although numbers are dropping, they are still high.
So as we come down this Omicron surge, there's still hundreds or thousands of people who will be infected in the coming weeks.
Scripps Health yesterday had 278 total COVID patients, with 51 in the ICU, which dropped today to 265 total COVID patients with 48 in the ICU. Sharp Healthcare saw a decline from 448 COVID patients last Friday with 73 in the ICU to 410 total patients today with 67 in the ICU. Kaiser Permanente San Diego says its COVID cases are also seeing a gradual drop.
Hospitalization rates are coming down and ICU are coming down as well.
Kaiser Dr. Will Sang says don't expect the hospital numbers to drop as fast as they increased, as some patients are remaining in the ICU for nearly 30 days.
It took about a month to get up there. It's going to take about a month for the case rates to come down, but the hospitalization rate will drag on for another 2 weeks or so.
But on the rise is the county's COVID death toll. Kaiser Dr. Will Sang says don't expect these alarming numbers to drop as fast as they increased. Heather Hope, CBS 8.
All right, Heather, thanks. The cumulative costs for the 2021 gubernatorial California recall election are out. Secretary of State Shirley Weber unveiled the numbers today. In a letter to the Department of Finance, the total statewide cost of the recall election was more than $200 million. The Secretary of State also noted that the invoicing process is still ongoing and that costs are subject to change based on a final count. A San Francisco 49ers fan is in a coma tonight after he was severely beaten at the NFC Championship game against the Los Angeles Rams.
The victim, Daniel Luna, was found beaten outside SoFi Stadium. He was wearing a 49ers jersey. He was taken to the hospital and placed into a medically induced coma. The incident is raising serious questions about stadium security, with the Super Bowl at SoFi in just over a week.
In a game that's going to decide who goes to the Super Bowl, when it's a highly emotionally charged game, of course, the stadium owners clearly know that there's a need for enhanced security.
SoFi Security and the Inglewood Police Department are now working to find the person or group responsible for Luna's beating. They're sifting through cell phone footage and security camera video. A 21-year-old Sacramento man is accused of opening fire on a Greyhound bus in Northern California, killing a 43-year-old woman and wounding 4 others. He was arrested a short time later, naked, inside a Walmart. The Los Angeles-bound bus was stopped at a convenience store in Oroville last night when authorities say Asadi Coleman started shooting randomly. An 11-year-old girl and a pregnant woman were among those hit by the gunfire. The girl is in stable condition. That pregnant woman and another man are in critical condition. The City of San Diego crews spent a third day clearing out a large homeless encampment in the Midway district. It's located along Sports Arena Boulevard near Rosecrans Street. This comes after more than a month of outreach efforts to connect people with the shelters. According to the city, an overwhelming majority chose not to take advantage of those resources. It's estimated that at one point more than 90 tents lined the street with more than 180 people living in the area.